Alright, so I'm going to do another comic review, and this one is actually not from Chris. This one actually is something I bought because I really enjoyed the first book. So I'm going to be talking about Punisher, King of Killers Book 2. This is the second half of the Jason Aaron Punisher run that he had done, quote-unquote ending the Punisher, which I've talked about before, but let's actually talk about that again. Because I've seen nothing but, absolute contempt for this run, and I don't understand why. Okay, this is one of the most Punisher books I have seen in a long time. What I mean by that is, this is 100% Frank Castle. That's the thing, is that it is 100% who Frank Castle is and what he's about. Him killing indiscriminately. This is a guy who has given all for a war and killed in the name of his family. And people are saying, "Oh, Frank never, killed in the name of a war. He didn't use his family as an excuse to kill people." Yeah, he did. It wasn't just this run that said it; it's others. Furthermore, the other thing that makes this run so, and I'll get more into it, is that this run, how they play it off of the secret origins of the Punisher, is that you could easily just retcon it out. And I talked about that before, where it's you could just retcon whatever is written in here, because it's kind of written from a standpoint of a group of people that you can't trust. It's the flashbacks are being told from people that it's like an untrustworthy narrative, so you can just, another writer can just come along and write it out. But Mulchi, I hear you say, aren't going to let the Punisher come back. It's all about Joe Garrison, the new Punisher. And to that I say, Frank's gonna come back at some point. You know this, right? Right? You guys are aware, at some point in it, 2 years, a year, maybe 2 years, Frank will come back. Because that's what they do with the Punisher, honestly. They have done weirder things. This is what ruined the Punisher for you, making him the leader of the Hand and giving him demon powers. Not when Punisher became a Frankenstein monster and fought Japanese soldiers, a super samurai being led by a German scientist in a robot steampunk suit. No. Or, maybe when Punisher was a demon hunter for God, using demon hunting weapons. No. That clearly wasn't it either. Oh, what about the time Punisher put on a War Machine armor and started, killing people all these villains indiscriminately, even though he never really cared much? No, that could be. What about the time Punisher used all of these gadgets from villains and heroes alike and used them to combat stronger opponents? No, clearly that wasn't it either. It's almost like this character is, changed from time to time and then goes back to status quo every so often. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying here, folks? This right here ruined the Punisher for you. This was the comic that ruined it. Because I guarantee this is the most Punisher comic I have read in a while. Yeah, Punisher, Frank Castle is the leader of the Hand. Alright, just to give you guys a quick rundown of what's going on in this comic. Frank Castle has become the new leader of the Hand, and he's become the avatar for the Beast, which is their demon god. And yes, they do reference the what goes on in Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil run. It was kind of running incongruently, of talking about what happened with Frank is going on, and the same thing going on with Matt at the same time. So yeah. And in fact, that's actually where this first issue starts off as is a good old-fashioned Matt Frank fight, Punisher Daredevil fight. And yeah, so this is nothing new, and we'll talk about the ending, which I've talked about before, but we'll get more into it. But yeah, so while this is going on, Maria, who has been resurrected by the Hand, so they could convince Frank to join them as their leader, as their king of killers, the Hand of the Beast, the High Slayer, the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla, take your fucking name pick, to basically join them. And Maria, her mind has been altered so much that when she's thinking back on all the stuff of after Frank came back from the war, he was almost not there, and all he cared about was being in a war. And I actually love the moment where there's a great moment in here where Maria is like talking about like, you know, how he treated like veterans who saved his life. He always treated like the war like the mistress and I was the wife. But then it was like, no, the war was the wife, I was the mistress, and he picked me. So you know, and then it's such a delicious flip on the head right there of just like Maria realizes that like Frank loved her more than his real love, which was war and combat and everything else in between. But again, I have to stress that the big thing about this comic is you can't really trust Maria's, you know, looking back on this story, because the problem is she was resurrected by the Hand, and the Hand kind of alter memories to begin with. In fact, like how it's all when they also look at the High Priestess and her backstory, and how it intercedes with Frank, it's clearly made to make you go, well, how can that be right? Because it's not. Because when you're brought back from the Hand, they alter your memories. So yeah, I guarantee you, the next time we see, you know, Frank come back, they're gonna, and some writer's gonna write in some story about how this was all bullshit, because you could easily do that. You could, and at the same time, if a writer goes, nah, the Hand did, you know, perpetrate and throughout Frank's life, like, of course they would. They could do that too. Like, it goes both ways. I also, now, if you're asking, did the Hand cause the Punisher's family's death? Did they cause Frank's family's death? No. They actually, like, do the smart thing, because even then I'd have been like, that's too much. That's a little too much. But thankfully they go, no, they didn't do that. It was just, like, luck and happenstance, and that caused them to get their avatar. And by luck and happenstance, I mean a gang war that killed them all. Yeah. And I gotta say, if you guys remember from book 1, the big villain here was Ares, as in the Greek god of war. And to see Punisher, like, still be Punisher, he's, like, using a sword very badly, but, at the same time, I love the moment where he more or less, one of the best lines in here is when Ares is knocking on the door of the Hand's headquarters, and he's like, come out and pray to your god, and, you know, so that we may win the war. And then Frank just blows down the door with his new god powers and goes, gods don't win war, bullets do. And I'm like, that is such a Frank Castle line right there. The fight between him and Ares is really good. I will say that, like, the ending, and I'm not talking about the ending, I'm talking about, like, when Maria finds more out about what happened to Frank and why he's called the Punisher, is kind of a sudden heel turn, but I will say it is earned in an extent. I will also say that Jason Aaron clearly wanted to write Moon Knight before going over to DC. He clearly wanted to do Moon Knight at some point. Between this and his Avengers comic, as well as some other stuff, he clearly wanted to do a Moon Knight comic. He just 100% wanted to do a Moon Knight book, but never got the opportunity to. Now he's over at DC going to be doing a Batman miniseries, and maybe some other comics. Who knows? Anyway, so yeah, the ending is that Frank goes away and ends up on Weird World, and no longer calls himself Punisher, he just calls himself Frank. He just calls by his real name. The thing of it is, I like that ending, because it's like, yeah, Frank has come full circle, and I will say that, like, when he has that moment of, like, I don't want to be the Beast, it is a little like, that was a little weak, but still, how they end his saga, and it's not like the Punisher's not gonna come back. Like, the Frank Castle's gonna come back. I've said it before and I'll say it again, they just do these things where they, like, do, like, these outlandish, like, bizarre things with Frank Castle, and then he comes back to status quo. I give it like maybe a year, 2 years tops before we see Frank Castle coming back and murdering, you know, pimps and drug dealers again. There you go. So, and I know people are like complaining like, oh, they made the Punisher woke. At no point did they do that. This is a straight up Punisher book. Yeah, this is, I'm like, it's so dumb. Like, this was good, and I love the artwork in here. Like, the artwork by, I forget their name. I have to pronounce, and even if I pronounce it, I'm going to fuck it up. So the artwork by Jesus Zayas and the flashback, because it's two different artists, Paul Azaqueta for the flashbacks. They're really good. Like, I really enjoy it. This is good, gory fun. Like, just look at that shit right there. That's the good stuff. All in all, I really enjoyed this. This is a nice, like, solid ending to this Punisher hand era. And again, I'm not saying this is the end of Frank Castle. He's gonna come back at some point. It's just a matter of if. It's more like a matter of when. So do I recommend Punisher Book 2 of King of Killers? Absolutely. This is, even though, yes, Punisher is a demon god running a bunch of ninjas, it's still Frank Castle. He's just like, alright, I guess I'm God, I'm gonna use to kill people. So there you go. So if you've read Punisher King of Killers, let me know in the comments below what you guys think of it. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.